I said, if you showed the picture by the kinnis of the 6,000 shluchim who come, who's the one guy that nobody believed would be on shlichus today? I think they would all point to my pic. Friends, colleagues, my mashpia, my teachers, they didn't believe in me. I don't know if I believed in myself after a point if it's ever going to happen. But evidently, from the answer of the Rebbe, the Rebbe never stopped believing in me.
Welcome to Homesick for Lubavitch, a podcast where we explore Lubavitch identity in the year 2024. My name is Bentzi Afson, and I will be your host. Let's begin. Alrighty, so I'm here in Cooper City with Rabbi Pinny Andrusier. Last minute podcast. The morning opened up, and we're here for the podcast. I appreciate you making the time.
Pleasure.
Rabbi Andrusier gave me a tour of his relatively new campus. It's a few years old, and what a story of transformation it is, taking a place that was once a very dark place, a drug rehab center with a jail that kept people in who had to be held in to the rooms with barbed wire and locked doors, and now it is a beautiful kindergarten where people want to come in and they don't leave because they don't want to leave, not because they're forced to stay. And but it's just a beautiful story. So anyway, a few people told me or suggested that I bring you on the podcast, or see if you'd come on the podcast. And it seems like there's a story about you that kind of floats out there in Lubavitch, and it'd be interesting to hear it from your perspective. The idea is that Pinny Andrusier is that guy who the Rebbe took and put him on shlichus. No one else would have expected him to go on shlichus, and the Rebbe put him on shlichus. I don't even know if you agree with that assessment, but it'd be interesting to hear a little bit your background and your story, where you come from, and hear a little bit more about how you ended up here and how we ended up with all this.
So thank you, Bentzi, for having me. And I think it is a unique story. To say I always wanted to go on shlichus, and I'm very clear about that. I think I always knew I would be good at doing this. I was always into the adventure. As a matter of fact, as I mentioned to you, that when you were a young kid, 1 year old, your father decided that he wanted to do something special in India. And he was looking for two of the right guys, as they called it, to be the guys who can go to India and create a camp. And your uncle, Yudi Shem Tov, at that time, he was assigned to finding two people. And Yudi made it very clear that he's not going to take two friends who are going to go there and just play around. He wants the right people for the job. And it was myself and Shia Harlick, who's today the director of Las Vegas, who we were the ones chosen. And at that time, I didn't even have a rapport. We're two opposites. He is very organized. I'm the wild and crazy guy. But we were the ones chosen, and we actually had an incredible time.
This is a B'nai Menashe camp?
B'nai Menashe in January 1989.
So just give a bit of background. It's like the Indian Jews. They look like Indians, but they trace themselves back to...
Right. They're called B'nai Israel. They call themselves B'nai Israel, I believe.
Right.
And they might consider themselves B'nai Menashe, because that sounds familiar. And there was a man there, Abraham Benjamin, who had contacted your father, and was really encouraging him to please bring shluchim to India. And we were the ones chosen. I believe we were the second group. I think Moshe Denberg and Moshe Drizin went before us for some Merkish shlichus, and we were the second, and we were there to open up a camp. Shia Harlick was just before that, the head counselor in your grandfather's camp in Camp Yisrael. I was the guy who was the real camp spirit. That was me. I was always jumping on planes, bringing chayas, making lebedik wherever it is. So naturally, I thought I would be an amazing shliach. But when I got married in 1989, I spent a year in Koil, and shluchim weren't taking out really people who weren't their relatives. So,
Really? Already back then there
yeah,
was.
no, and then it was more than now. Now people are already opened up to, there was not as much nepotism as there was in my days. In my days,
Really?
you had to be the son, the son-in-law. You had to be real blood to get a place on shlichus. And I told my wife that we'll give it the year after Koil. If I have no offers, I'm going to start a business. So in Tafshin Nun, for with certain connections, together with my father, B'tzal Rader, started a business called Nest Paper because of Tafshin Nun being Shnas Nisim.
Just 1 second. Your father, how are you related to the Andrusier of the paper store?
He's my uncle.
He's your uncle.
Yeah, my father's his older brother.
Okay, and your father also lives in Crown Heights?
My father lived in Crown Heights.
So
He moved here 3 years ago to
you-
Florida.
So you grew up in Crown Heights?
I grew up in Crown Heights.
Okay.
But I was always on planes, from after Morristown. I was wherever there was a reason to travel. I was one of the first guys on the plane. Before it was as popular as it is now. The only place they didn't send me to was Russia because in those days it was the Iron Curtain, and they knew I'd blow the whole operation. So they sent the Lazars and those guys. I didn't make that cut. I was from the ones that say we're not sending them there. But India came and we were chosen.
So you opened up the paper store?
So I didn't open up the paper. That's my uncle's store. We opened up
the paper company
It was wholesale distribution
of paper.
Yeah, to yeshivas, to restaurants, schools, hotels, whatever. That's what we got into, and I did it for 2 years, and then my wife was expecting. I mean, this is already a pretty known story. My wife was expecting then my son Eli, just before he was born in Adar Beis, Adar Beis Tafshin Nun Beis, just before the Rebbe had Chav Zayin Adar, and this is a couple of days before, like 4 days before. I wrote into the Rebbe, and my wife's about to give birth. She's in her 9th month, giving birth to her second child, our second child, and I don't know exactly, where our apartment is too small. Where are we going to put this crib? We're living already in very cramped quarters. So I was looking for houses. Should I buy one house on Brooklyn Avenue for $400,000, or a brand new condo on New York Avenue that had just been completed for $125,000? I wrote there. I said I always thought I was going to go on shlichus because in my days, every bacher wanted to go on shlichus. There was no such thing as anybody going to college or opening up a business. If you weren't chosen on shlichus, that became Plan B. So I said I was your typical guy who wanted to go on shlichus, but it didn't happen. So I started a business, and Baruch Hashem, I feel I'm ready to open up buy a house and take it to the next level. And the Rebbe told me, Al Pi Seder, the Rebbe's reply, and again, this is like 4 days before Chav Zayin Adar, Al Pi Seder, Yizbainenu biyachad im zugasei tichya, Eifei reitzim lisyashiv ata, the word ata was underlined, Kane bishlichus, Yachlitu loisi anal, Mazim bezeh, Asker alatzian. Basically, the Rebbe told me the right thing to do is discuss it with your wife. Where does she want to live now? The word now is underlined. Here in Crown Heights or in shlichus, that's the right thing to do, and that's what you should decide, Asker alatzian. I came out of Binyamin Klein's office with the answer, and right there was Itcha Springer, who was my Aseh L'Charav. That time the Rebbe was very into the campaign of Aseh L'Charav. Everybody should have his own personal Rav. And I showed him the answer. I just, transcribed it. I just wrote it down verbatim from what I received from Binyamin, from the Rebbe. And he got all excited. Oh, the Rebbe, I never saw, he got it, if you know him, real hispilus, he got, oh, the Rebbe schicked him shlichus. So I come home, I told my wife, the answer and what Rabbi Springer said. And my wife she has one sister who's married to Moshe Meir Lifshitz, who's the shluchim here in Fort Lauderdale. And my wife said, let's go.
Homesick for Lubavitch is brought to you by Yuvla Media, which, yes, is my video production company. At Yuvla Media, we believe in the same principles as this podcast, namely that in our communities there are just so many stories worth sharing and worth telling, and that in the end, a good story is always so much more. Over the past few years, we have helped dozens of nonprofits, companies, and families share their very precious stories with the community. If you're looking to share your story, please don't hesitate to reach out to us for a free consultation at hello@yuvlamedia.com. Again, that's hello@yuvlamedia.com. A link can be found below as well. For now, let's get back to the podcast.
So the next day, I wrote to the Rebbe that my wife is choosing shlichus. She likes the idea, but I need at least till Rosh Hashanah to figure things out, and to to also to give the business away to my brother, teach him about the business. My brother Dovi was getting married that next week, so I asked him, I asked the Rebbe, is it okay if we start officially Rosh Hashanah to be our first Pu'ula? I already knew that Florida, here, Cooper City, was my place because as a bacher, I was always helping out Rafi Tenenhouse, and he always offered. And as a matter of fact, when I showed the answer to him and to my brother-in-law, they each said that they'll help me get started with some money. And so I wrote to the Rebbe, could I start at least Rosh Hashanah? The Rebbe said, Haskamu bracha askar al Tzion. So I moved here just a day or two before Hurricane Andrew, which was August 24th, 1992. So my first pu'ula was helping the victims of the hurricane. They called it Project CARE, Chabad Andrew Relief Effort. Rabbi Tenenhouse is the one who came up with that name. And because I didn't have a place yet, I had just arrived, I was in charge of collecting all the perishable foods, non-perishable foods, and bringing it down to Homestead where the hurricane hit hardest. And then we found this place, not this campus, of course, but Cooper City. And it was before Rosh Hashanah. I put up a sign, free services. We had 400 people attend that very first Rosh Hashanah. Put up posters and flyers all over the place, and they all came, and it was incredible hatzlach. And ever since then, I think it's been one. The brachas of the Rebbe have been with me. You could see it in everything we've touched. Has turned into literally incredible success. Numbers, I've always had great numbers in here in Cooper City, Hebrew school services. I think I had that little head start that most people struggle with in other places of shlichus. Whenever we do a program, Kenai Nahara, we could see clear maifsim, clear brachas from the Rebbe come true. And I think, as you saw, you took a tour of this beautiful campus. What was, a dark and dreary place, as you mentioned, a place of drugs. We've added so much life here. The energy here is spectacular. We have you saw the mikvah is almost up and complete. School, we have the yeshiva TAG for boys, for Bachrim 14 to 18. That's thriving. We had a beautiful banquet last night. They're going on the trip. And these kids who have struggled in every other yeshiva, you had to hear one Bachra after the other praising how they feel they've changed and grown this past year. The main building is minyan. We have a minyan. We have a couple of minyanim every morning, night. The hotel we've created for retreats, and we're helping people who are down and out with temporarily homelessness. We have a place to accommodate. And the preschool, which, as you mentioned, you used to have bars you couldn't get in or out. Now people are signing up because of how beautiful the preschool is. And this, in addition to all my other programs, with the Miami Heat, Lag BaOmer, Rosh Hashanah, you could clearly see that the Rebbe's brachas are literally on everything that we do. You could see always beyond expectations, and I'm forever grateful.
It's interesting. Before you mentioned that you always loved adventure. Is that something that has changed or evolved over the years, or is it still the love of the adventure? Shlichus is still the love of the adventure. It's also interesting that you know the you mentioned the adventure in connection to the things you did as a bacher, where in many cases, a bacher doesn't have to worry necessarily about the costs of the program that he's running, and you're more of a free spirit. You don't have to worry about your wife and kids, what they think, and so on. And then shlichus, and then when it came time to go on shlichus married, it was harder to find a place. It took you a couple of years to make that actual decision. So describe a little bit, the evolution of this adventure for you. Is it still an adventure? How do you see it like that? How do you see it that way?
So I think my wife, my kids, community will tell you I'm still that free spirit. I don't think I've slowed down as much. For sure, not mentally. I try and think out of the box. I give a lot of that credit to Rafi Tenenhaus, who always also thought, out of the box. And I apprenticed for him, I would say, as a bacher a lot. So it got me always to thinking that way. As far as the travel adventure and doing other things exciting, as I mentioned, I do every year the Jewish Heritage Night, and I always try and create something bigger than the year before, and it gets more exciting. I always have to make sure it's exciting. I think back, I'm talking to you, and a lot of images, like I say, when I was in India in 1989. I also go back about 25, 26 years ago. Rabbi Moshe Kotlarski Olav Shalom asked me to share my story at the Kinnos, and your uncle Nachman, right, Sudak,
My great uncle, yeah.
your great uncle.
Yeah.
So he's there, and I said, guys, and I feel the same till today. I said, you have to enjoy what you're doing every day. When you wake up on shlichus, if you're not happy, if get out. You really have to. You have to enjoy. You have to find something. Listen, the Rebbe gave us each a unique shlichus.
Right.
There's no question that my personality and my interest and my thinking and style is very different than the many shluchim. I mean, we have hundreds of shluchim here in Florida alone. Each one of us has a much different style.
Right.
You have to fit the shlichus into your style so that every morning you look forward, to that day. You get up with a new bounce and see what you can do to make sure that you enjoy what you're doing. So I think I've lived.
So what did Nachman say?
No, so in general, I talked about the Jets, I talked about sports, and I talked about being free spirit. And everybody said, like when I came out of there, he said, Hatzalah had to come and revive your uncle because he had a heart attack. It was everything he was, he was trained not to be. It was opposite of everything he represented. It was funny. He's the person that everybody said had the, he was like, he was having the most issues with my speech, but everybody else, all the young guys loved it. Again, I was part of the team that lit the menorah.
1 second. I just want to, I'm sorry to cut you off. You mentioned earlier the challenge of nepotism when you were looking for a place of shlichus, which was interesting to me because I remember when, just after I got married, not that I was going to suffer from that issue. I had family already on shlichus, but if that's what I had chosen to do, but I did actually for a couple of years. But I remember everyone talking about how like nepotism was an issue now, it was never an issue. People used to have places to go, and you're saying it was already back then, which is interesting.
Okay, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I could say I have 10 shluchim around me that I've brought out, and none of them are my relatives.
Right. So I'm saying it's interesting that your experience is the opposite of the way I've always understood it, and it's interesting to hear how it's very much a matter of perspective at the very least, if not just people thinking that things used to be different in the past. But I'm wondering, based on what you just said, if there was another dynamic going on where, because you just mentioned how like the older generation looked at the way you saw shlichus as this free spirit, make it yours, do it your style, kind of very individualized, organic way of looking at it. I'm wondering if that was another thing that held them back from bringing you down. Like, here's this free spirit as a bacher. He's a lot of fun. He'll run our camp. He'll go crazy. He'll make energy and so on. But is he the right guy to come? Did you
No,
sense?
I'll tell you why. Because I think Rafi Tenenhouse, again, I'm going to give him the credit. He always appreciated my free spirit. He was a lot of it. I was like, I would say, um, he molded me in many. I mean, the free spirit I always had, but he molded and channeled it into a very healthy, in a very healthy way. So I would give him the credit, and I think he appreciated. I think with him it was more financial.
No, but
It's a
outside of him, you said you had a hard time finding shlichus.
no, yeah, because I think all the and I'll prove to you what I say is I think accurate. Um, in my days, the way I feel, everyone was refusing. All the old shluchim were refusing to give up territory. Like they thought, even if a guy was in the same state but another city, it would take away. And the reason why I say I think I prove it is look at the conventions at the kinnis when they would say all the shluchim, and Moshe again would say all the shluchim before Gimel Tammuz get up, and you see, compared to how many shluchim exploded after Gimel Tammuz, you can't even compare because I think only later were shluchim realizing the willingness and the necessity of bringing more shluchim to open up in every nook and cranny. Before that, there was one shliach to a state, and even though the next city was so many miles away, either they were saving it for a family member, or they were scared they needed to be the only shliach in the state. This is my feeling. Again, it's my personal feeling.
So what do you think changed?
I don't know. Maybe just the incessant calls of people continuing to say, "Listen, I know that there's a place," and I think some places learned their lesson because if the shliach resisted for too long, people just plopped in there, call them mushrooms or whatever. So they figured it's probably healthier to go through the proper channels and make sure that they're loyal to the head shliach. I mean, this is my personal observation, but what I clearly see is that where in my days, in the late 80s, 90s, where there were so fewer shluchim going out because of that nepotism, because of that unwillingness of a shliach to think big and realize that every shliach in their state, in their city, is another feather in their hat. I think today you have it. I mean, look at Florida. Compare it. I mean, Kanai Nahara, we've grown, and every shliach I see, one is building something more beautiful than the next. And that's, again, this is, you have to give, acknowledgement and thanks to the Rebbe because he clearly indoctrinated us with that open-mindedness. And Baruch Hashem, today you see it come to fruition. I don't think you saw it. That slacha that Chabad houses are having with building and everything else, I think today it's bigger than ever.
But when you went on shlichus, did you feel that there was a stuffiness? Like, because you're talking about how things are now compared to then, but at the time you had a hard time finding a place. You for 2 years you felt like you didn't have a place on shlichus, like there wasn't a place available for you. You went into business. Did you feel once you decided to go? I understand Rafi Tenenhouse was very welcoming to you, but when you would go to a kinnis and you would meet other shluchim, and at that time you were the minority. You were talking about speaking in front of my uncle Nachman Sodek Alav Shalom. At the time, he was the majority. Like people like him were the majority, right? And when you would go to a kinnis, did you feel a certain stuffiness, like how do I fit in here? These guys are old school.
Not, once you were in, I never worry about what other people care. If I could, I wouldn't be that free spirit. So I never
I didn't
cared.
ask if you cared. I asked
Yeah,
if you felt.
no, no, I never felt. I mean, first of all, once you're in, you're in.
Okay.
So you're a part of the club. I mean, again, so I never felt that stuff. No, no. Listen, I admired all the shluchim. I wanted to be. I mean, there was no. I remember that, like the Farbrengen of Rosh Chodesh Kislev. I don't know if it was before I was a shliach or when I was finally a part of it. But the Rosh Chodesh Kislev, the Shabbos Farbrengen, and then all of a sudden, they would I think it was when the Rebbe gave out the mashka, whatever. And then, I mean, there was a moment there. I guess the Rebbe spoke to the shluchim, and then afterwards they broke out with the Rosh Chodesh Kislev niggin. Everybody, all the shluchim, you felt achdus. No, I don't think you felt the stuff. I never felt stuffiness. I think it was just maybe a business decision, or I think the mindset of shluchim beforehand that there's only a few places available, so I better save it for my son,
Right.
or my son-in-law. And then later we came to realize that there's enough for everyone. So why hold anybody back? And you have so many shluchim, so many young Kailiyungalite who want to go on shlichus, and it's only going to help us do what the Rebbe asked us to do. So I think.
What did the Rebbe ask you to do? What do you feel is your shlichus? What do you feel is the point of you being here? Besides the adventure, maybe not. Maybe it is adventure, but what is adventure? What are you striving for?
No, the adventure is not necessarily my nakud of shlichus. I think each and every one of us, our shlichus is first of all to be there for every Jew, to reach and find that every Jew. You always hear about the Rebbe. I think Jonathan Sachs, Chief Rabbi Jonathan Sachs. All of a sudden, always. We quote him as saying is with the same energy that Hitler Yimach Shemam sought out every Jew to kill him, the Rebbe, spared no expense to find that one lost Jew in Alaska or wherever he might be to bring him back to Yiddishkeit. Right. So we're always good, midyanim are thinking about the Jew who's in the outer stratosphere, but how about the Egena? First of all, I use that for the opening of my yeshiva, together with with this great staff I have. Just give them a shout out; they deserve it. Rabbi Isaac Chanin, Rabbi Levi Blazinski, and Rabbi Zalmi Raksin. I mean, we always hear what's about our own kids, and I think that's one thing that's really thriving here is our yeshiva for our own kids, shluchim's kids, and all that, to make sure that they find that passion and joy in being a Yid, being a Lubavitcher, being a Nash. So I think that's one thing. So I'm not in Hong Kong, where you're from. I'm not in Bombay, India. I'm not in Nigeria. I'm here in Cooper City. So if that mentality and mindset is find that lost Jew, wherever I went as a bacher, I certainly have to be here. So for some, it's providing them with a meal. It's putting on tefillin, helping them put up a mezuzah. Sometimes it's even marriage counseling, parent counseling. All of a sudden we get thrown into so many, we wear so many different hats as shluchim. And we see they're literally physically being there for families who need support, emotionally, and of course spiritually. And we have families here, this community, just to give you a quick story about Cooper City. Before I got here, my president, who wasn't Shomer Shabbos, David Damitov, David and Shashi, who are the pillar of my communities till this very day. We're here 32 years now. We started again in Tafshin Nun Beis, 1992. He was here, wasn't from, but he wouldn't drive on Yom Kippur. So he was walking to the conservative temple on Sterling Road here, and the police stopped him. And he says, "Where are you going?" He says, I'm going to the temple. He says, "Hop in, I'll give you a ride." And David says, "I'm not allowed." So the officer says, "It's my car, I'm the officer, I give you permission." She says, "No, you give me permission, officer," but he doesn't, pointing up to Hashem, pointing up to God. 32 years ago, this community did not know what a walking Jew is to synagogue on a Shabbos.
Right.
Today we have over 100 people walking to shul. We have scooters. I mean, it's unbelievable what's going on. We sit here for a kiddush lunch after Shabbos. We're over 100 people every Shabbos, and it's unbelievable. So the transformation is, I think that's when you ask me what am I here for in shlichus. I think it's whatever it takes, whatever I'm needed for. Now it's going to be a preschool. Till now it wasn't a preschool. It could be a summer camp. It could be a yeshiva. It could be just housing people who are down and out and need a place to stay for a week and two until they find more permanent housing. We're building the mikveh. I cannot tell you how many women said they used to go or they'll start going once the mikveh is up. So every little thing that you do, I've found that it's going to fulfill a purpose of our shlichus, and it's going to be very well received.
It's interesting how you brought up the yeshiva, and I was also thinking about it when you were showing it to me on the tour earlier. Maybe I'm reading between the lines, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like when you were a bacher, you were more like a energy guy than sitting and learning, or like you were a bit of you stood out for your energy. Is that a correct assessment?
I actually did learn, and I
Right.
continue to learn. I think so.
Right.
I think everybody will tell you that I'm always sitting and learning. But I was definitely the rebel getting kicked out of yeshiva. So I relate to these.
Right.
These
I think you said that
boys.
to me earlier. Yeah.
So I relate to them a lot more than I do the regular ones with the white shirt.
What were you rebelling? Describe to me rebellion back in the day. What does that look
So
like?
chutz binyak, I couldn't stay. I was always giving the rashiva. You said it also. If I joke around about it. I just spoke for shliach. He just had a pre-Gimel Tammuz event. And I said, if you showed the picture by the kinnis of the 5,000-6,000 shluchim who come, who's the one guy that nobody believed would be on shlichus today? I think they would all point to my pic. My personal feeling, they would say, this guy I never thought.
No, but you were it was a attitude thing. It was a Yiddishkeit thing. Like what?
No, not Yiddishkeit. Again, in my days, you didn't see that a lot. It was just I never listened to the rules.
Right.
I could never sit and wear a white shirt. Like even here, I don't let the boys wear a white shirt. I hate it.
You're against white shirts.
I'm against the white box. Yeah. No, you gotta. I want you to. There's a uniform. You gotta look like a mensch. But the white shirt, in my days, if you wore, we're talking about the most chassidish guys. If you wore a white shirt during the week, your mother killed you because you're gonna get it dirty for Shabbos.
So what would have happened if Rabbi Pinny Andrusier is growing up? Oh, I see a snake there. Interesting. It's my Florida experience. What is that? What kind of snake is that?
I don't know, but it's pretty cool. I want to tell you the first snake.
We got to worry about that?
No, I don't think so. But it's climbing in the preschool, preschool yard. But I want to tell you the first snake we saw here was the week when they threw down the sanin into the stick.
The Torah. Wow.
So we were living with the times. All of a sudden, we saw the staff turn into
very interesting.
To a snake. So over here we have fox. We have a lot of iguana. We have rabbit.
Yeah, I have foxes in my yard too.
Raccoon.
But iguanas, no. So anyway, Pinny Andrusier growing up today, what would have happened to him? Because the story that I'm getting from you, and maybe we should have started off a little bit more background. Maybe we could still go there, but the story that I'm getting from you is that you were it wasn't like a Yiddishkeit thing, like I'm going to leave this whole thing, but yeshivas they don't care for my attitude. I don't care for their rules and regulations. Full of energy, which is great for a camp, but harder to bottle up into a more kind of where does he fit in the shlichus space, like the tie and the button down shirt shlichus. And yet you ended up on shlichus, mainly it seems, because the Rebbe gave you an indication that even though you had gone into business, it was still something to consider, and your mashpia encouraged you to, and it seems like you always wanted to do that anyway, right? But that was back then, where, or I guess my question is, was it just back then, or do you think the same thing would have happened today? Or do you think that today we've gotten a little bit too, like you said, white boxed, and You're either in or you're out. What would have happened to Pinny
I,
Andrusier had you grown up today? Is my question.
I really think that today I would probably have even more struggles than the Bachram who come to us. In my days, I never compromised. I never thought to compromise on anything Yiddishkeit. I never had to, like, I never felt enticed to give up on Shabbos, kashrus. I never, with my beard, none of that. Um, but there was never a question of getting kicked out of yeshiva. I got kicked out for the day, 2 days a week. I got slapped and back in. There was never a question of getting accepted into yeshiva or a camp. My father used to go. I grew up more in Montreal, although I did go to your grandfather's camp a couple of times as a camper and a staff member. But my father would call up Beryl Muchkin in Montreal. Beryl, mein Kinder seien auf dem Bus. He called them when they were already on. We were on the bus. And we went yeshiva. There was never a question of going to yeshiva or not. Today, every camp you apply, and your kid could be an angel. The first thing you always hear from every yeshiva camp: can't come, not accepted, no room. So I think that in itself sets back kids. Every kid that I see, and again, especially the ones who are here, there's rejection all
What?
the time, and I think that takes an emotional toll.
Mm.
And I think that was my biggest, incentive and encouragement of opening up the yeshiva. And we called it TAG. TAG, you're it. Again, it stands for Torah Avodah Gemilas Chasadim. But really, our motto is TAG, you're it, that we take you and we're going to build, and not try and fit you into that same hole as everybody else. We're going to see what your strengths are. And we have here kids from, different levels of the spectrum. We have kids who were from kids who were walking around every davening hat and jacket, but struggled in reading. And because of that struggle, they weren't accepted into a regular yeshiva. And we have some kids who come from shlichus homes and they're not excited, or they'd rather be on their cell phone. And we try to individualize everything, this whole yeshiva experience. Some need reading improvement, some need behavior improvement, some need just that chayis. And again, they're not great students, but we'll give it to them more of a passion in miftzayim and in gemilas chasadim. So I've seen tremendous growth. So you ask me about me. If I was today's bacher, there's no question I wouldn't be allowed into any of the yeshivas, any of the camps, straight out. I made it through the system. I even learned a year in Koil. There's no way I would have. I see what my kids go through. I see what their friends are going through and the struggles. And I really think because the yeshivas aren't talking to the kids, they're not looking at the kids. What the kids, I think most yeshivas forget about it. They're not even. We're not even talking the same language.
Right.
And I think they're not even realizing what the kids need. So the first thing the kids are told, you're no good. You're not good enough for my school. You're not good enough for my camp. That rejection, it frustrates the parents because what am I going to do with my kid?
Right.
But the kids hearing that message, automatically it sets them back so many steps, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, to the fact that they do struggle. Once you're my type of character
Right.
and wildness out of the box, now you feel, okay, my option is only to start having second thoughts on Yiddishkeit.
Yeah, if you're told you don't belong enough times, eventually you'll believe it, right? If you're told that this isn't that you don't fit in here, eventually you say, yeah, I don't fit in here, I don't belong here. Let me find somewhere else. Like, there's only so many times you can reject someone and expect them to keep coming back. What do you think changed though? What do you think?
I'm going to tell you a story only because
Go ahead, sure.
not our yeshiva tag. Before this property was ready and we opened, so there was another yeshiva trying to open, and I was a big admirer of his father, Aaron Laser Zeitlin Olav Shalom from Tzfas, and his son tried to open up a yeshiva and he had nowhere to go. They were supposed to open up in Eretz Yisrael, but then COVID. So I said, you know what, come take the place for free until we're ready. And he came here for several months. So these boys had nothing to do. I was just hosting them. This one boy is from Philadelphia, actually. And what a great kid. Davening, um, hand jacket, white shirt. I mean, that's the yeshiva that he was running. Kid was at every Seder, Farbrengen. I mean, to me, he was like, I'm even thinking, why is he in this yeshiva? Why didn't he make it in any other yeshiva? And I went over to him after being here for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And I always have a report. I always have a relationship with the boys, even then, now especially. But even then, they felt like I was a part of the yeshiva. I was always checking in on them. We had actually one of your other cousins here who was in that yeshiva from Arizona, right? Shemta from Arizona.
Second cousin, yeah.
Whatever. He was here also at that time. So I remember I walk over to him because I'm watching him like really participate in everything and really trying hard.
Right.
And I go over to him and I say, I just want to tell you, I'm very proud of you. I've been watching you, how you are for bringing and you in the Seder and how you daven. He says, and he tells me, this is a 13 or 14-year-old kid. He says, stop it. I said, what do you mean? I'm serious. He says, no, nobody's ever told me that. I mean, he told me the words like that would like put a knife in any mechanich's heart.
Wow.
Or, he says, I've been kicked out of other yeshivas, and I can tell you maybe his only struggle was maybe dyslexia or learning disability, because he looked like that type of kid. Again, I wasn't his teacher, but his behavior, he didn't get into any fights.
Right.
He was at every Seder. Why would a mechanich put down such a kid? And why would another yeshiva not allow him? Again, in my eyes, many yeshivas, you have to be the mitzuyanim, you have to be the best of the best in order to get into there.
Right.
And you have to fight to get in. I think that typical response from every camp in yeshiva today, first we're going to say no, so you fight to get in, I think takes us an emotional toll on kids that I don't understand. So I see that now more than ever. If you would see the people I grew up with, today there would be Russian mafia, but everybody made it. You fought, you clawed, you got slapped, but there was no such thing as getting kicked out for more than a week,
Well, so what do you think changed? What, in your opinion, what do you think changed?
I think, first of all, the numbers got so big that yeshivas could be more selective. I mean, I imagine my days it was Morristown, Altera, and that was that rivalry. Where are you going? And,
Right.
and that's it. Then there were a couple of places on shlichus. I think today, Kanai we've grown so much that there's a waiting list. If I don't take you, and I want only the ones that are going to pay the most and make my yeshiva shine because they're going to do the whole Masechta by heart. I don't have to take the mediocre, so to
Right.
speak.
Right.
But let me just tell you, these kids we have here, the Bachrim, they're incredible. I mean, if you ask me, on Holla these days, they're missing out. It's the most fulfilling thing, seeing how the Bachrim here at TAG are thriving, progressing, growing. They're midis. I mean, if you give them a little love, you're watching. I mean, they're budding. They're blossoming like an incredible flower. It's something very special, very fulfilling. So when you ask me what motivates me every day, coming here and seeing the chayas and seeing these kids who wouldn't be given a chance in other yeshivas, and they did. They struggled. They're only here if they struggled somewhere else.
Right.
And to see them last night at the banquet, each one describing where they've grown and receive rewards for their progress in areas that they struggled before is an incredible, fulfilling feeling.
Describe a little bit. I mean, the Rebbe clearly was someone that you felt brought you in, right? Especially in that last response, that you should still keep shlichus on the table. But describe a little bit. Was it only the Rebbe? Was it Mashpiyim back then? You said it's just Springer. I think it's very, 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 very important what you're talking about. The acceptance, the invitation, that you're part of this community, even if you don't fit, even if you're not the typical bacher that fits in perfectly to the system. There's always going to be a system. There's always going to be a system that caters to the majority of people, right? There's always going to be, this is what we expect of Bachrim, to sit and learn X amount of hours and behave themselves in such and such a way. Every community has that. Every group of people has that, right? But I think what's interesting in your story is that you felt part of it, even if you didn't fit into that specific system. Describe, like, how did you feel that were your parents loved you, but outside of that, what was it that at the end of the day the principal still cared about you, teachers cared about you, like what made you feel part of it at the time? You're being kicked out of school left, right, and center. What made you feel that this is still my place?
So first of all, when I grew up, there was no option of leaving the city. It was natural. We were all wild. Again, we were all wild. You got slapped and then went right back for more. But
There were options.
I really think it is the Rebbe, and I'll give you the story. Again, these are stories that already I've told before, but I always had a passion for sports, and again, this is something that over here we provide the kids because we know kids need that natural outlet, and some yeshivas shun sports. We promote it. We take them to games. They play a lot of sports every day, so they have that outlet, so they don't have to feel it's either or. It's either Yiddishkeit or sports. So I had that passion. And
A Yankees fan?
big Yankee fan, Jets fan, Islanders, and Knicks. So I'm a New Yorker through and through.
I mean, you're not old enough to remember the last time the Jets won a Super Bowl, right?
I was alive, but yeah, it's a long
I
story.
I just had to rub it into you. It's okay.
We have some. We have a lot of Patriots and some Eagles fans here, actually.
So they rub it into you. Okay.
Yeah,
Fine.
anyhow, but let me just tell you. So I was in Shtasakel, Tufshin Memches, I think it was 1987, to get the bottle of mashke from the Rebbe before lighting the menorah. Okay, it was the big thing. We were lighting the menorah for the Miami Miami Dolphins, and at that time by Verbringen,
But you weren't yet a shliach in
I was a
Florida.
bacher helping out Ray Vitena.
Okay. So this is your
And
bacher.
through connections, he had it, and I never realized why I was the one who was zeicha until I got reminded that it was my brother's Meir Gazinski, shliach in 5 towns. He came over to say Mazel Tov to me for my brother's bar mitzvah, and Moshe Kitlarski was giving me the script of what to say the next day by Verbringen. So we shoot him away. And this was the breaking news because there was nothing like it before. The Rebbe wanted Shnas Hakel to have big Hakel gatherings and menorah lightings in the most remote places. And this was like something that everybody knew was going to be like the news. So at the Verbringen, at that time, towards the end of the Verbringen, the Rebbe would give out bottles of mashke, and you had to announce why you were taking the mashke. So the Rebbe told me to wait, and Moshe told me to wait till everybody else. There was like 150 people, Shabbos, Chanukah, Hakel. So there were like 150 people who took bottles of mashke and announced. It took a long time.
You announced too to the.
So then all of a sudden, they tell everybody got their mashke, went back to their place, and the whole place went shh because they knew. It was already known that what I was going to do. And I was a bacher still. Everybody else who goes up was in kapotis. I'm wearing a light gray suit. And all of a sudden...
A hat?
Yeah. I never played with...
Just clarifying.
Yeah. No,
the hat was black.
Yeah.
A black hat, a light gray suit.
But all the bachrim were in gray, blue suits. It wasn't...
you emphasized the light gray suit. That's why.
I'm saying it was typically
You pushed it a little bit.
It was atypical. No, I didn't. It was atypically black. Everybody else is in black kapotis. I'm saying I was a bacher.
Oh, you're a bacher. I see.
Everybody had gray and blue suits.
I see.
I was clearly not the typical guy going up to the Rebbe. And then all of a sudden everybody went shh, and then Moshe goes go. And from the back, they made a trail for me, and I I went up to the Rebbe during Farbrengen, and the Rebbe poured the little mashke, and then I turned around like I was scripted to do. Said, "Mit Hashem, morgen bei Nacht wird vorkommen am Mesilas Hakel, had Lokes Neder ceremony in Joe Rabbi Stadium, when the Miami Dolphins wollen spielen the Washington Redskins for 70,000 Menschen." And I turned back to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe smiling, right again, and when I walked over to get the bottle, and the Rebbe told me, "You have to invite everybody," because in that time you had to invite to whatever mesiba you were taking the mashke for, for your malav malka, your dinner. So, but I didn't think to invite everybody to the game, and the Rebbe said, "You forgot to invite everybody." So I turned around and said, "Alle sein eingeladen," and the Rebbe smiled again. So
people laughed.
Yeah. Everybody was laughing the whole time. Yeah, it was like it's a memorable moment. If you ask anybody about Farbrengen, they'll tell you they remember.
Wait, 1 second. You were in Florida. You flew up to the Farbrengen?
No. So I was a bacher.
Right.
So everybody else who was working on the game,
right,
had to build a menorah and setting up. They were already in Florida preparing.
Mm-hmm.
And because my brother's bar mitzvah was that Shabbos,
uh-huh.
I stayed in New York. I also went that time to Bristol, Connecticut to try and get it filmed on ESPN.
I see.
So I was doing all the New York things, one of which was getting the bottle of mashke from the Rebbe and announcing it. But the Rebbe's smile for this, again, this wasn't your in-the-box thing that Lubavitch was doing. Sports.
You were the first one to bring menorahs to sport events. Like
together. Again, it was Rafi Tenenhouse and several others.
So you were involved in the first time.
I was involved in the first time. I was his main. Me and Shmuley Ganevish.
Before that, people didn't.
Nobody broke in at all. No,
because they couldn't, or they thought it was inappropriate.
No, I don't know what. Nobody. You needed. We had a connection to get in there the first time.
To the big games.
Yeah, it was something. It was the first time, and it didn't happen actually for a long time after. Now I do it. Our Jewish Heritage Night with the heat is something very unique and special. You should come and see it. But
so you're saying the Rebbe smiled. It was an unusual thing, and the Rebbe basically.
So when you ask me about being out of the box, I think that's the way the Rebbe was. He was revolutionary. He didn't want anybody to be that typical in the box, and he appreciated. And I've spoken in many places. I just spoke, as I mentioned, last week for a Chabad house. I think friends, colleagues, my mashpia, my teachers, they didn't believe in me. I don't know if I believed in myself after a point, if it's ever going to happen. But evidently, from the answer of the Rebbe, the Rebbe never stopped believing in me. And that's.
One second. You didn't believe in yourself. Why? When you couldn't find a place, or?
Yeah, I think more for that. But here you see that
Did you ever
I don't believe in self. I gave up hope.
You gave up hope that you would find a place, or you gave up hope that you would fit in as a shliach?
No, I wasn't worried. Once I'm a shliach, I knew I'm running my own style, and nobody's going to stop.
You gave up hope being able to get it in, to find a place.
To find a place.
Why didn't Rafi Tenenhouse invite you right away?
I think it was more financial. I think nobody else was here.
Right.
Again, growth in places of shlichus.
It wasn't that he did. It wasn't that he didn't want you to come.
No, chas v'shalom.
It was just. It was not an option. Yeah. Okay, I understand.
The minute it opened up with that answer, he was most welcoming. He said, "Come, take the whole West."
I understand.
I know how to have 7 cities here under my domain. So there's no question that he was very willing and supportive in many ways, not only financially. So that wasn't an issue. But I'm saying is where I gave up, I don't say I didn't believe in myself, but where I even gave up on it ever happening, the Rebbe never stopped believing, and the Rebbe, you see, continued to.
It's a great story. It's a very powerful story, and it's very resonant. It's not the first time I hear such a story. The question to me is, because bring the conversation back full circle. We're talking here about the difference between then and now. How, it's reasonable to feel that had you grown up today, things would have turned out very differently, and you feel that a big part of that is the Rebbe, right? So the question then becomes: is after the Rebbe passed away, what do we do? Like how do we? Because I think it's not just, the Rebbe was such a Ohev Yisrael, which is true, and the Rebbe showed that kind of love to people who were out of the box, which is also true. But at the end of the day, the Rebbe was also, he's the Rebbe. He has that authority to say, I'm going to accept this person, and that's how it's going to be. Today, you can say, I'm going to accept this person, but you don't have that authority. Nobody has that authority, right? So what do you think, how do you think we figure out, what do you suggest? What do you envision for a community that keeps its standards, has its beliefs, has its norms, but also is able to, because at the end of the day, it's not just about making people feel better, which is also an important thing. Maybe it's the most important thing. Like, you think about it, had there been not kept you in and encouraged you to stay in even when it felt like the game was over, a lot of the things that you had accomplished probably wouldn't have happened, or certainly not guaranteed that they would happen. You could say someone else would do it, but lav dafka, right? Right? I don't think that's a fair thing to say. I think you've done things that you did that other people wouldn't have done. So think about all the lost potential out there, right? When you cut people out, it's not just hurting them, you're also hurting you. There's all this potential out there, right? That's being lost because people feel that if they don't keep to a certain narrow script, it doesn't work. What do you think is the way to stay the course and hold on to an identity while also being welcoming and open to people with different personalities and different ideas when you don't have that authority?
So two things come to my mind to answer that question. First of all, I hate hearing when people say that Nazis, Hitler, Yimach Shmam, killed 6 million. That number is a farce, because think of similar. It goes to with what you said,
right?
Because it's not 6 million. Think of how many children, if
say.
you're Bubba
Yeah.
and you're Zayda, wouldn't have had, it would have been one of, if God forbid they would have died, they would have been considered 6. They wouldn't have said, 6 million and 3. We throw that 6 million. Think of how beautiful your family.
Right.
Each one of those, if they survived, what would be today?
Right. Absolutely.
Okay. So
sure.
that's one thing to think about when I answer. The second thing is, when you talk about the Rebbe's being an Ivy Yisrael and loving and all that, there's two ways of loving a person. There's one is loving a person who's sick, loving a person who's bad.
Right.
Rachmanis. You're fry, we love you. You're sick, we love you. And that's not the love that the Rebbe had. The love that the Rebbe had was together with a belief. And what I mean is that his love wasn't, okay, you're sick, you're fry, we're going to love you anyhow. The Rebbe's love transformed you. That means where I think some of the people today, some of the mishpiyim or some of the leaders in our community, it's not that they don't show love. By not showing love, they give up on the kid.
Right.
Whereas if I continue to show you I love you and I believe in you, you become that person. And I really believe that my 32 years of shlichus and the things that I did, nobody, certain things maybe, but some of the lives I touched, that life wouldn't have been touched by me. And it's only because the Rebbe loves each and every one of us and believes in each and every one of us. He never gave up hope on each and every one of us. And he knew that each and every one of us has a unique shlichus. And we're all shliach. Even if you're not a shliach by Merkaz and all that, every single person is a shliach, call it to prepare for Mashiach, whatever the case is. And every person who is squashed and who's beaten down and ends up not fulfilling his tuition because the system didn't believe in him, ends up missing all those opportunities of people who should have and could have made a difference in somebody else's life. In their own lives, of course, they could have fulfilled so much more of a potential.
Right.
And then had an effect. Now, some of the people that I've had an effect on, somebody else wouldn't have had that effect on them.
Right.
So I think that when you say about the Rebbe's love, it wasn't just, okay, he's fried, but let's love him anyhow. Not on contrary. The Rebbe's love in you was his belief in you. And therefore, it was an encouragement to realize your potential. And with that realization of your potential, you go on to being the best that you could be. Not to be like the guy from, like the story of Reb Zusha, not to be like Moshe Rabbeinu, not to be like, your great uncle of Nachman Sudak. Not everybody's going to be like that. But are you going to be the best person that you can be, fulfilling your potential? And I think that's where I give the Rebbe, the most credit in my life of allowing me to, and believing in me to, despite anybody who would have said maybe nay, saying, no, I need you here because there are people who you're going to help that nobody else is going to help. And I think, to me, that's, that was, it's more, again, I appreciate it more. It's more meaningful than anything else that perhaps has, or when you say who else, I don't know if I need anybody else. It was that, it was the Rebbe's belief in me and his bracha for me to stop the business and go with my wife on shlichus, that I continue to live with that, with that bracha and with that shlichus.
Yeah. And I wonder, tying it back to that boy that you spoke about, who said you were the first person who told him that you were proud of him. I wonder if he needs anybody else. The fact that you made that comment to him, I'm not saying you're the Rebbe, and that's obviously not my point. But, I think sometimes we make it, it's like only the Rebbe can show belief in someone. Of course, it's different when it comes from the Rebbe, right? But I think we can all show belief in others, right? Showing belief in other people, showing people that we see something in them that others don't. We see something in them that they don't see in themselves. That's something that we can all do, right?
Me telling you exactly what I feel was unique about the Rebbe, to me, that's asking me as well to be that person to somebody else.
Right.
So I didn't mean that the Rebbe is the only one. On the contrary, we need to emulate the Rebbe. We need to follow in his footsteps. And where I feel that many of the community leaders, mechanchim and all that, they're quick to, they throw the kid down, and then they say, oh, now we have to have Av Yisrael and pick you up. Stop throwing down the kid. Why do we have to be condescending and demeaning to every person we see and make them feel rejected first? And then, on the contrary, I think one of the words I would use for the Rebbe, he empowered us. We should empower, when we have all those kids, instead of rejecting them, empower them from the start. And you'll see that they won't have to go hit a rut and hit a low point and then come bounce back up. A lot of our kids, even the leaders here in TAG, the reason why they're doing so well is because they've experienced in their own teenage years that journey down and then bounced back up. So now they become the shluchim and the leaders and the mechanchim here. Why do we have to have that experiences that you could only teach kids today if you've been there before? I never did. That's the one thing that I'd never had. I think young, I think out of the box, but I've never once tried treifus. I've never once trimmed my beard. I've never once played with Chilul Shabbos. Again.
So how do you believe in someone like that? Someone would say, it's one thing to believe in Pinny Andrusier, who's a troublemaker, but he's a frum kid. He's a frum kid. He's holding the line more or less. He's not good. How do you see, what does it look like to trust and to believe in a kid who, for whatever reason, is not keeping Torah mitzvahs?
So I'm going to tell you a great story. We bought the property 4 years ago, and right away I had this vision. I had this vision a long time ago.
Of the yeshiva?
Of having this yeshiva. I saw what my kids are going through, and we were once at a Kinus Zori, and again, Moshe Tlarsky, he comes in crying, Egan, a Lubavitch kid, overdosed, and I went over to Moshe, and I said, Moshe, I'm here in Cooper City. At that time, I'm in a little trailer across the street. My community doesn't appreciate me. I'm into these big programs. I don't have time for this. I said, listen, Moshe, help me get a place. And I'll leave my place. I'll leave here, Cooper City. Or do it here. I'll focus my life. I have, I think, the right staff. I have Adi Goodman, my brother Huda was here. I think I have the right staff that could relate to these kids and give them a chayas, give them a passion, make them realize that they don't have to
Right.
taste the forbidden waters, that there's a lot here in Yiddishkeit, in Lubavitch, that you could really enjoy life. I'm enjoying, again, I'm into sports. So as a matter of fact, tomorrow night, I have a balabas who's taking me to the Stanley Cup final. It's not an either or. You can enjoy Yiddishkeit and be a chassid. I don't know if well, everybody listening is going to agree, but that's the way I say. Continue your passion. Not everybody is the same. You can be a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, a sports enthusiast, and still put on Rashi Rabbeinu Tam every day and learn Chitas and Rambam. Why?
Right.
What's the steer? Okay, it didn't go anywhere. Again, it was a dream 20 years ago. I offered it to him and whatever.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, this place became available. Mamish Yud Aleph Nissen, 4 years ago, I think it was. They sent me an email from across the street. Do you want the place? I came running over. That day, I wrote a check for $100,000 to tie it up. I brought Moshe and his wife here, came to visit it. They fell in love, and I could tell you that I wouldn't have this place. The night before closing, Moshe, Olav Shalom, he got me the donation I need to close. It was unbelievable. And right away I saw I need to open up this yeshiva. So I started scouting for who would be, the right person to do it. And we found, the three, Levi Blazinski, Isaac Hanin, and Zalmi Rakshin. And my wife, she didn't know who these people are, and she's worried what kind of yeshiva they're going to open up here. So I said, and you said something before, and you'll see it in the story. There's two ways to address the issue today with Bachrim today. And unfortunately, so many families, Eigen and Shluchim, have kids who are struggling with Amunah, with Yiddishkeit, and everything else. So, they already had jets who are dealing with older kids who have already tasted a lot of the temptations in life. I thought that my yeshiva is going to be unique. I'm going to go for kids 14 to 18 who've yet to really experience with girls and with drugs and everything else, and hopefully make it more preventive. Give them the chayis at that young age so they don't slip off the bandwagon and then have to be brought back.
Right.
And I was in contact with Mayor Schmuckler, and I said, I would like to be like a feeder and basically get the kids, and if they still need to go from here to you, they'll go. I'll take the kids younger, 14 to 18. You have them from 16 to 20, whatever. So my wife asked me very clearly, like, who these guys from Jets just had already a reputation of drugs and sex, whatever. So I promised her, my wife's name is Gitti, who's been literally my partner in the shlichus. I said, listen, we're having the camp, but I promise you, no drugs, no sex, nothing. Allowed to say that on this podcast?
Too late.
Anyhow, so what happens is, okay, we're going to experience, and we're doing a summer program. They called it VIP. And we're going to have it here. All of a sudden, like 60, 70 boys sign up. Incredible summer. My wife sees all these boys coming in, no yarmulkes, long hair, some earrings, nose rings, smoking, vaping. She's having a heart attack. I'm having also a little heart attack. It's not what we expected.
All right.
And my wife says, closing it down now. You promised me stop, zero tolerance. All the things I promised her is not happening. Okay, I said, it's a new thing. Let let them do their thing. And, we'll, listen, it's an experiment. We'll do the summer, and then we'll know what to say. She comes in like 3-4 days later. Pinny, that's it. It's over. I said, what's the matter? A girl just walked into the dorm. You promised me, and a girl just walked in the dorm. I said, okay, that I'll stop. I couldn't stop the smoking, the baby. I go in, and I start walking from the main building here, we're here on the campus, and I walk into the dorm, And just as I get to the dorm, the girl had walked out and starts walking this way in the overpass. So I wanted to kick her off the campus. And I say, and again, I don't know these kids. These are all these kids. I said, excuse me, hi, I'm Rabbi Pinny. And the kid turns around, says, hi, I'm Zalman. I said, oh, thank God. And he gave me a big hug. And he gave me a big hug. Let me tell you, this kid Zalman.
He had long hair.
He had long hair, down to blonde hair, no yarmulke, down to his tuchus.
So she thought it was a girl.
She thought it was a girl. He said, it was a kid named Zalman. I verbringed in Wilkes-Barre last year. I told this story, and I'm sitting in front of this kid with a hat and jacket. And I said, you know who this kid is? It's Zalman.
He's sitting in front of you.
This kid, Zalman, is sitting there. He had the summer here where we let him in. With long hair, we accepted him. Nebuchadnezzar has his own personal tragedy in his life that caused him to take a little detour.
Right.
Today, Kanai Nahara, he came to visit us this year. He's sitting with a hat and jacket. Totally, I would say in the system.
I hope not a white shirt.
It could be. No, he's not always with a white shirt.
Thank God.
I don't know. I don't remember.
Thank God.
It was Yud Shvat when I verbring. But let me just tell you, amazing.
A beautiful story.
But where did he get that opportunity to turn around?
Right.
Not in Olatera.
Right.
Excuse me for, throwing them under the bus. Not in Morristown. It's places like here, TAG, Wilkes-Barre, Jets, who are opening up their doors and giving a little bit of...
And their hearts.
The hearts, exactly.
Yeah.
And you have to see it. You come here in the morning, and maybe you saw when I walk in, these kids come, they give you a hug every morning. What can we do for you? Can we get you a coffee? Can we learn? Can we verbring? It's unbelievable. These kids have it. We're giving up on these kids. Why? I'll tell you, my own son, I have a son, Shmuley, who struggled, and the yeshiva didn't let him in.
Right.
And then, so it came time for Bamatur. He's only 15. He's not even 15. And then they didn't give him a chance because right away, okay, kid doesn't fit in, we kick him out. And then I sat and I taught him for the bar mitzvah, and he did the whole parsha. He laned it.
Right.
Nobody believed it. I turned around after, to give the sermon. I'm the rabbi. I'm the rabbi of the shul. All I could do was cry. And I just said in these tears, my whole sermon was, why did the school give up on this kid? Why are we giving up on these kids? They all have the potential. But if we think that they're going to fit up our expectations, no kid will make it. We have to look at these kids. And that, again, TAG, you're it. I'm looking at your expectation. I'm looking at your potential.
Right.
And I want you to be what you can be. And I think this is what the Rebbe saw in me. And this is what I think the Rebbe saw in each and every one of us. And that's what hopefully we could start. If I think the leaders, parents as well, start looking at that at our kids. Not what we expect of them. What's going to be the best for them. Make sure they're happy. And give it to them show them that Yiddishkeit, it's not an either or. You could be as frum and enjoy it at the same time. Pursue your passion.
Right.
But do it as a yid. Why is there a stira?
Right.
I think our kids have incredible, infinite potential. We're just not opening our eyes to what's best for them.
This has been a beautiful conversation. And I think that it's a very hopeful one. I have to go catch my flight, and you have a campus to run. Yeah. But I think this took an interesting turn. It's been a wonderful conversation, and thank you very much for making the time. It's been a pleasure meeting you.
Likewise. We've met before, as I mentioned.
In
1989, you were a little kid, baby in Hong Kong. And I have great memories. Your parents were very gracious hosts.
I've outgrown my diaper, I believe.
Thanks so much, and that's luck in everything you're doing. Likewise. And I invite everybody to come see for themselves. And of course, if there's anyone who needs the yeshiva tag, we're here for them.
Wonderful.
And whatever. I invite everybody to come see for themselves the great work we're doing here.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. The music for this podcast comes from the album Repentant Doors by Oren Sor and Nadav Bachar and is used with their permission.